We formed a quorum. Shall we invite the guests in to join us, please?
Chapter 4.
Good morning, Secretary. Good morning, government officials and secretary. I'm not going to introduce you one by one. This is a public hearing on Sha-Tin section of Route 8. This is the second meeting. Let's go to part 4. Because we have to end the meeting by 10:45 because the secretary is otherwise engaged. So we'll have the meeting till 10:45. Part 4 is relatively simple. So let's move directly into part 4. So you can start now. Any declaration of interest? Does the government wish to speak? If not, then Mr. Lam Chak-ting, over to you. You are the lead member. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Secretary. How are you recently? Good. Well, let's look at the management of the Sha-Tin section. It's not very good. Let's take a look at the figures first. Let's take a look at Table 12 on page 45 of the report. There are 3 tunnels connecting Kowloon and Sha-Tin: Taste Khan Tunnel, Lion Rock Tunnel, and EN Tunnel, Eagle's Nest Tunnel. We expected that after EN Tunnel was commissioned, it could share out the traffic of the TCT and LRT. But then, after the commissioning of EN Tunnel, the utilization rate was on the low side. Let's look at the figures in the audit report. During the peak hours, EN Tunnel's usage rate was only 79%, 64%, and for TCT and Lion Rock Tunnel, its percentage is 120 to 140%. It's over capacity, and the congestion problem at LRT and TCT is also very serious. At the peak hours, the tailback is on average 1 to 2 kilometers, but then there is no observable queue for EN Tunnel. And the audit report shows that after the commissioning of the tunnel, after the route was commissioned in March 2008, the TT had not conducted any specific study or review on its road usage until January 2017, when it commenced the toll rationalization study. I'd like to ask the Secretary, after the EN Tunnel was built, should the government departments closely monitor the usage rate and the traffic flow so that this tunnel could share out or alleviate the pressure on traffic in that area. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Lam, for your question. Indeed, when the government built road infrastructure, especially tunnels, we were very concerned about the usage rate or the flow. And earlier on, we told the transport panel of the electrical that we had plans on the 3 land tunnels and the 3 harbor crossings and how traffic could be diverted, and we presented the relevant proposals. For the Yan Tunnel in Sha-Tin section, the road usage was much lower than that in TCT and LRT. We are closely following up on the situation. I'll defer to the Transport Department colleague for supplement. Commissioner for Transport. Would you like to take us through the transport panel paper? R7081 in the info. Maybe you would like to explain that a bit so that those who are tuning into the debate can understand more. Yes, I will briefly explain. Or the Commissioner for Transport, rather. The TD has been closely monitoring the usage and the flow of the EN tunnel. After the commissioning of the tunnel in 2003, we've been increasing the number of bus routes, helping to increase the road usage. In recent years, why the capacity is not fully utilized is because Taipo Road and Sha-Tin section is very congested. And recently, we have started a toll rationalization study covering the 3 harbor crossings and 3 tunnels from the NT to Kowloon. And we will study how we could, through the on-site inspection of the flow, observe its pattern, and also using the toll level, there should be a more reasonable distribution of traffic between the 3 tunnels of TCT, LRT, and Yan Tunnel. And at the transport panel, we have also talked about the coverage of this study and the study principles. And after that, we have conducted public consultation. Later on this year, hopefully, the outcome of the study can be shared with the transport panel. Going forward, we will continue to work hard to increase the flow of traffic in EN Tunnel, and we hope to divert the traffic in the area, and we will not affect traffic in the non-tunnel areas. In paragraph 4.4 of the audit report, it said that since commissioning of Sha-Tin section in March 2008, the TED had not conducted any specific study or review on the road usage of EN Tunnel until January 2017, when it commenced the toll rationalization study. For 10 years, there's been a gap of 10 years. The Secretary said that you've been closely monitoring the situation, but there's not been any study or review, though you've monitored the situation closely. So what kind of monitoring have you been doing? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Lam. As we said in the transport panel, for land tunnels between Kowloon and Sha-Tin, and also for the harbor crossings, apart from the toll levels, other factors like people's driving habits have an impact on the usage. Different tolls are being levied for different tunnels, and there's been a change in the traffic flow. But overall, for LRT, TCT, and ENT, people have certain habits when it comes to using these 3 tunnels. Now, if they use TCT LRT, then they want to go to the other side of the harbour, they will use Eastern Harbour Crossing. And if they chose EN Tunnel, they will naturally opt for Western Harbour Crossing. And for LRT drivers, naturally, then they will use the Harbour Crossing in Hong Kong. So we have followed up on this, and we understand that this is the case. We agree to the Audit Commission's report. We will follow up on the situation, and later on the usage and the flow of the tunnels will work even harder. Chairman, the Secretary said that the motorists have certain habits of using tunnels, but that's been known all along. But after the new tunnel has been built, the usage has been very low, so all the more you need to launch new measures to increase the utilization rate, say, for example, by putting in more bus routes so that traffic from the other tunnels can be diverted. You should not just use, say, the driving habits as an excuse. I think it's an issue with management. Let's take a look at Table 12, for paragraph 4.6b.
It's very clearly that said that the district councils of Sa-Tin have been asking the bus companies to start new routes and new bus routes, and also Chambers of Commerce asked for allowing the RMBs to use ENT. If you look at table number 13, ENT whole day service is 5 bus routes, but Tasecan 23 and Line Rock 21. And then 4.7, paragraph 4.7, according to the TD, when considering approving new bus routes and GMB routes, it would take into account the existing demand, potential, so on and so forth. Now, in para 4.9, the Audit Commission said that in 2018-19 bus route development bus route planning programs, the TD has proposed 7 items of improvement passing through the Sha-Tin section, and they're consulting the district councils. Now, it casts doubts in people's mind. The district councils have asked for more bus routes, and in fact, the number of bus routes is very small at present. And after the Audit Commission has checked your accounts, then you propose 7 improvement items. For 10 years, you have not made any improvements, and you only have 7 new items after you've been scrutinized by the Audit Commission. So in the past 10 years, you have wasted a lot of the traffic capacity of ENT, and therefore it is not able to alleviate the traffic congestion of the 2 other tunnels. The Secretary. In responding to the Audit Commission, our colleagues have agreed that they fully agree with the Audit Commission, and also in paragraph 4.5, and also in subsequent paragraphs, they will try to divert traffic, and also there are improvement measures. If I may ask the Transport Department colleagues to supplement so that you have a better understanding. Chairman, if I may add, with regard to the bus routes, I agree with the member and also the view of the Audit Commission that there is room for us to meet the demand of the public, and we will also consider whether there is spare capacity in some roads. In drawing up the bus route plans, the Transport Department takes into account various factors. The items are not just limited to those in 2018-19, which are number 7. We do respond to the views of the people and consult the District Council in 2017-18, there were 4 items which were related to the ENT. And in 2018-19, because basing on the views of the public and also the views of the district councils, we talked to the bus company, and we are now following up the matter. I want to inform Mr. Lam that we'll continue to work in this direction. And with regard to bus routes from the new territories to the urban area, depending on the demand of the passengers, and also according to the demand of the traveling public, there is a greater demand for Lion Rock Tunnel and also Case Can Tunnel. And if we are able, we will divert some of the traffic through ENT. From Sha Tin to Kowloon, I think Mr. Lam is familiar with that. The trunk road encounters certain bottlenecks. Therefore, as for Tai Po Road, there are some road improvements, and we can therefore make good use of the ENT if the bottlenecks are released. The question by Mr. Lam is why you have taken so much time. And there is traffic congestion at Lion Rock Tunnel, and there is an economic cost. The question is why you have to wait for 9 years before you implement the 7 new measures or 7 new items. Is there an oversight why you have taken so many years? Chairman, the bus routes are scrutinized every year, and we agree that we will speed up the process. Chairman, and up till now, she has not explained why from 2008, when the route is opened, or when the tunnel is opened, 9 years have collapsed, or rather 9 years have elapsed, and the tunnel is not put to good use. Why they have not done anything in the 9 years? Was it because there was no demand from the district council, so you felt that nobody made use of the road, the tunnel, and therefore you shouldn't have spent the money, so much money, on building the tunnel? Now in para 4.7, was it because of passenger demand was low, potential was poor, or service level not up to standard, or what? The director, you can explain with the help of table 12. During the peak hour in the morning, Case Can Tunnel 26 minutes, Lion Rock Tunnel 17 minutes, the Sha Tin section 5 minutes, AM peak hours for crossing the tunnel. Now, you've built the road for so many years and usage is so low. Why don't you allocate some bus routes to make use of this tunnel? From 2008 to 2017-18, that was the situation. If you have not done that, that's okay, but you have to explain why you have not done that. Chairman, in designing or reviewing the bus routes, we do look at the demand of the residents in the locality. As for Case Can Tunnel, Lion Rock Tunnel, along the bus routes, there are many housing estates, both public and private, and there is a high demand for such bus services. And we have to find whether there are adequate passengers to justify a new route. The roads in the vicinity of Sha Tin leading to these 3 tunnels, they do have certain capacity, and whether they can accommodate new bus routes. is another issue. As for the 23 bus routes, we have adjusted the services of the bus routes to meet the demand of the public. We may not have new routes or substantial number of new routes. We do upgrade our service, say, by providing transfers and other arrangements. In December 2017, during peak hours, we added two new routes, and therefore altogether 17, and a total 25 instead of 23 in the table 13. Mr. Lam asked why you have to wait until this year. Now, table 13 was as at December 2017, and only at that time you added some route. But his question is, why from the start until 2017 you haven't done anything to relieve the traffic congestion of the two other tunnels, and thereby leading to many problems in both Kowloon and Sha Tin? Is there an oversight, or is there negligence? Mr. Lam, maybe I give you the floor. Now, Chairman, concerning the Director's point in respect of Tai Po Highway Sha Tin section, there is a bottleneck, and if there is a new route, the road capacity cannot accommodate. But I'm sorry, you asked for money to widen that section of the road. Just now you asked for money, and the works can only be completed in 2024. Now you say you're afraid of traffic congestion, and therefore by adding bus routes, that will cause further congestion. That is a difficulty. But after vetting by the Audit Commission, you say you can add more bus routes. So what are you talking about at all? What about you talking about? Why is all these inconsistencies? Well, to answer Mr. Lam's question, we did try in bus planning program, we did try to attempt moving some routes from Lion Rock Tunnel to ENT. In March 2009, we attempted to reroute a bus from Tai Lam to Castle Peak Road. At that time, local people said that in Chengsha area there was traffic congestion, and the diversion will affect the stability of the bus service. After consulting local people, we arranged the route so that it went along the original alignment or routing. Now there was a cross-harbour service from moving from Taiskan Tunnel to Sha Tin section Chengsha Highway, but some local people said that the rerouting would affect the overall journey time of the bus routes of the buses, and therefore the proposal was shelved. So we did try to reroute the buses, but because of nearby traffic congestion, people were afraid that that would lengthen the overall journey time. Mr. Lam, I refer to Tai Po Highway Sha Tin section. As for the question raised by Mr. Lam, it takes time to make road improvements, and before the completion of the works, we still are open to any suggestions, whether we can rearrange some routes to redivert some bus routes from Lion Rock or Taiskan to ENT without affecting the overall demand. We will work through the district councils, and we will listen to local people to see if some routes can be diverted. In 2018-19, there are 7 new items. Some are related to adding frequencies. Some are related to new bus routes. And we are consulting the councils, and if they are agreeable, then we'll implement the measures. Chairman, that's exactly the point. At the start, the administration told us that the nearby road networks had limited capacity, imposing a constraint on adding more bus routes to ENT. Yet suddenly, they said that it had an open mind. They said that they had an open mind, and they would have new bus routes. So they have it both ways.
So, Commissioner, you said that you want to redivert some bus routes to ply through EN Tunnel, but then that meets with objection from the district. You haven't been very specific on the exactly which route it is, and we don't know about the change in the bus routes and the schedule of buses. It's impossible for us to comment on that, and it's difficult for the PAC to scrutinize or look into those details. From my personal experience, if you want to redivert bus routes, that would definitely have an impact on the residents. Some bus routes have to be, say, relocated and etc. So it may affect the residents, and the district representatives will just naturally, understandably object to the proposal. So it's not a question of diverting which route to ply through EN Tunnel. Rather, you should be looking into whether you can add new routes to EN Tunnel to ease the burden of the other tunnels or the routes. So if that can be done, the passenger demand for the other routes will decrease, and in the long run, you would be able to alleviate the situation. So you should not be just cutting some routes from the other tunnels and divert them to go through the EN Tunnel. That's not going to work. So we are talking about two things. You're talking about rediverting the routes or adding new routes. Now, maybe in the past you tried to redivert the routes, people objected to it, but now we are asking whether you should be really instead adding new routes instead of rediverting the routes so that the best use can be put to the EN Tunnel. Chairman, we'll try to strike a balance. There are two aspects. We want to encourage bus routes to go through the Sha-Tin section. For addition of new routes, in 2017-18, 2018-19, for example, for new areas like a Shouchun Estate, a Shek Mun Estate, we would explore new routes which should go through EN Tunnel. And we had an easier consultation work because these are new demands. But then for existing routes going through TCT and LRT, what Mr. Lam said is very right, because these routes will affect the existing passengers, and the bus stops might have to be relocated. So we have to strike a balance. If there is room to do anything, we'll definitely do so. For buses going through EN Tunnel now, at the peak hours and for circular routes, we will put in enhancement measures. Say, for example, they will be turned into whole day services. We will do that. We will increase the frequency during the peak hours. We will also provide whole day services that can help increase the utilization rate of EN Tunnel. Chairman, I am a electrical member. I'm also a district councillor of the North District. My experience is that the TD staff are not very actually capable of listening to local views or heeding to local views. You said that, well, maybe there isn't enough passenger demand for a certain route proposed, then they would not provide these new routes. The Commissioner said that it's easier to add new bus routes, say, to new areas like Shui-Chun-O, and it's difficult to do so for old districts. I find that hard to understand. Now, if for old districts you are going to redivert routes, but rather you are providing an extra option for passengers going through a less congested tunnel, covering a wider surface area. Well, I don't see the district councillor will object to that kind of proposal, so if you say that if I open a new route to replace an existing one, then people would naturally object to you. What you should do is you should provide a new route to passengers, and then the passengers who are attracted to this route, then the pressure coming from the district councillors will be lessened, and then afterwards you can talk about adjusting existing services. So if you go by the approach of cutting one bus route and to provide for a new one, then of course people will object to you. Chairman, for 4.6, paragraph 4.6b, it says that members of the Sha Tin District Council have requested the TTD to introduce new bus routes passing through this Sha Tin section. Okay, Mr. Lam, just one more thing from me. I hope that the Transport Department can give us a relevant information on the adjustment of bus routes after the EN tunnel, when the bus routes were introduced, and the relevant details. And also, when the Chambers of Commerce were asking for the EN tunnel to be opened for use by red minibuses. Why are you not acceding to that request? Well, we have an established mechanism to go by to decide on RMB, and we will look at the traffic situation, etc. We do have an ongoing mechanism to assess that. We have considered proposals from individual Chamber of Commerce, and if needed, we would conduct an open tender for the certain routes. Can you explain how your mechanism works? How? Are you protecting the interest of bus companies at the expense of the RMB? Can you tell us the mechanism that you have? Now, when buses compete against the railway network, then you are protecting the railway network because we've spent a lot on building the rail network. So does this same sort of principle go with your consideration of RMB routes? How come that your mechanism fails to meet with passengers' needs for such services, and we are seeing congestion all the time, day and night? So, and also Mr. Lam was also asking about why that you are only conducting a review in 2007, 9 years after the commissioning of the EN, and why do you have this 7 improvement items 9 years later? Well, we aim to be forward-looking. We don't want to be blaming what you have done and what you have not done. We just want to find out about your mechanism. Well, try to explain the mechanism for us to better understand how it works. Mr. Lam asked that for information on adjustment of bus routes in relation to Yan Tunnel, we can provide further information. In 2017, Table 13, this is an overall table showing the number of bus routes increased in the past. And for RMB, for our public transport strategy, it is a railway-oriented approach. which are supplemented by, say, buses, RMB and GMB. Now, so this is very much a railway-based transport strategy that we have. And in considering whether GMB and RMB routes should be introduced, we would be mindful about whether the existing public transport services are already adequate, say, for example, bus services. And say if RMB and GMB operators make certain proposals, we will consider whether the area is served by the rail network and franchise buses, and whether certain demands at certain times are still being unmet. And we would then conduct a open tender exercise if needed. So we will assess the situation under our mechanism. Commissioner, the shortened section will lead to Lai Chi Kok, and it is a major trunk road. You are providing few bus routes, and if one takes the MTR, one has to go to Kowloon Tong and then try to change there. Then there is this indeed a direct route, but then you said that you would give priority to MTR and then you will look at bus routes then. Well, this is a direct link. Why aren't you allowing the operators to use them? It's not congested and the capacity is not fully utilized. It doesn't make sense. Commissioner, you've come for funding application way back, and we have to look at it from a value for money principle. So why do you have to build such a big rail? Because you want to provide a certain capacity. And Mr. Lam asked you, after you've built this road, you have not been fully utilizing the capacity. We've spent the money, but it's not been put to the best use. I don't think you have achieved your objective. Is that what you meant, Mr. Lam? Yes. So, the Secretary, value for money perspective. I'll try to respond to Mr. Lam's comments. The Commissioner said that we have a public transport strategy for the Yan Tunnel. Indeed, the minibus operators have asked to use the Yan Tunnel as well. In the past 10 years, have we not done enough? And I think the Audit Commission has pointed out the deficiency, so I think it's clear for everyone to see. And for the minibus operators using the Yan Tunnel, we are now conducting a study, and the TD will analyze the situation carefully, and once we've got the decision, we will talk to the relevant stakeholders and the public. All right? Mr. Leung. Thank you, Chairman. On the traffic volume, I will save that to be asked by Mr. Lam. I would like to ask a question about the contract of the management operator of the Chingsha control area. Now, for this contract, this is called an MOM contract. Management Operation Maintenance Contract. It was awarded in 2013. In June 2013, you awarded the contract. Actually, how many tenders came forth? And for the operator awarded the contract, did it submit the lowest bid? You are referring to paragraph 4.10. Commissioner. On Mr. Leung's question, for the contract awarded in March 2013, that was a second phase, and we have a first phase contract from September 2013 to September 2019 that was awarded, and to another contractor. That was the 6-year contract in the second phase, and that was awarded through an open tender exercise, and it was awarded to the incumbent operator. We don't have the information on hand. Later on, we can provide you with information on the number of tenderers. Was it the winner, the lowest bid, putting in the lowest bid? Can you also provide the information? Yes, it was the one with the submitting the lowest bid. Well, can you be clearer? Is it they put in the lowest bid. Now, as for the amount given by the government, we can provide you with the information later. Now, for this MOM contract, it will end in September 2019.
Is there any arrangement for a new contract, or is it too early to make such an arrangement? To the Commissioner. Chairman, with regard to the tendering process, usually that will be about 9 months to 1 year in advance. This is the third round, and there is a framework on the contract. And we will start very soon a internal mechanism to provide more time, to provide adequate time for public tendering. I want to move on to 4.11. 4.11 is the arrangement for monitoring the MOM contractor's performance. Para C says that according to the current MOM contract, a government monitoring team comprising officers from the TD, Highways, EMSD, and RHSD is responsible for monitoring the operator. When there are 4 departments involved, there should be 1 department which is leading the team. With regard to this so-called GMT, in the past 5 years or so, did the people sit together and had meetings with the operator if there was? And then were there any minutes? If the answer is none, how can there be any coordination among the 4 departments? 4.11c, the Commissioner. With regard to the GMT, monitoring the operator's performance, including operation, maintenance, so on and so forth, there is division of labor among the 4 departments. As for the division of labor, there is clear delineation among the 4 departments. Each department is responsible for a specific area. The TD, for example, met with the operator regularly to assess his performance, and the highways did the same. As for the EMSD, together it worked with the TD and participated in the joint assessment. The RHSD, when need be, would take part. It was about the maintenance of the administrative building and certain areas within the control area. If need be, the RHSD would be involved, as said by to answer Mr. Leung's question. The 4 departments might not have a regular mechanism to assess the performance of the operator together, and they might have different times in conducting the assessment. That would take about 1 to 3 months. In response to the Audit Commission, at the end of 2017, we added the table on division of labor to the contract, and then coordination was done according to that list. the 4 departments monitoring. We will coordinate the efforts of the 4 departments. So you just affirm that there, or rather, you just confirm that there was no coordination in the past 5 years. I just want to hear from you whether there was coordination or not. Now, each department has a specific area of monitoring, and the specific division of labor is put in the list of put in the contract. Is it an existing contract or future contract? As for the division of labor list, it is in the current contract. It has been added to the current contract. It has listed out the areas of responsibilities of the TD, highways, EMST, RHSD in respect of the various parts, and that includes the maintenance, the buildings, and also other ancillary facilities. And we are responsible for the daily operation, monitoring the daily operation of the tunnel. There is also coordination of coordination monitoring the performance in respect of maintenance of the buildings and also the ancillary facilities. Okay, they have a list on the division of labor. Now, can you confirm that the transport department is the coordinating department? So technically speaking, that is called the division of labor between EMSD and highways and RHSD, but the coordinator is the TD. Can you confirm that? Yes, we can. Mr. Leung asked for the minutes of the meeting. Can you provide them? Them? Yes, we can. I just want to confirm that in the past few years, the 4 departments did not sit together to discuss this contract. Let us not make any assumption. Was there a meeting? You might have meetings face to face. You might have internet meetings. Were there minutes? Were there meetings? The TD and the various departments have different roles. Sometimes we did the coordination. As for the road and the tunnel maintenance, the highways department was monitoring that every month, and the transport department and the highways department also have officers, resident officers on site. Every time the highways department participated at the meeting, and we could check the minutes, and then we can share the minutes with you so that you could have a look at what we have done. I want to refer to paragraph 4.21 or 4.21. The highways department, the RHSD, the TD had different work and responsibilities, and they would make suggestions and to the operator in respect of his performance. But 4.21 just listed the 3 departments, not the EMSD. The 3 departments mentioned here raised technical issues with the operator. On the whole, it seems that the administration had not done any assessment on the overall performance of the operator. Is my understanding correct? The Commissioner. Just now, the GMT formed by the various departments might not have regular meetings. As it is pointed out in the Audit Commission report, each department had a regular monitoring of the performance of the operator, and every 1 to 3 months there was a meeting with the operator, and also there was a performance assessment report every month. And if there were any problems identified by any department, the TD would be informed, and the TD therefore would be aware of the overall performance of the operator. In response to the point raised by the Audit Commission, such a mechanism can be systematized. There should be a regular meeting of the GMT so that the GMT so that there can be a better monitoring of the operator. I heard from the Commissioner that meeting with the when there was a meeting with the operator, and if there was any issue, then the TD would be informed. Now, when they had a meeting with the operator, were there any minutes taken? Now, the Commissioner said that if there was an issue, then the TD would be informed. But if there was no issue, then the TD would not be informed. Is it correct to say so? And then would there be copies of minutes sent to the Transport Department if other departments had a meeting with the operator, or they would only inform you of any serious matter, just like those who informed the secretary? Only the secretary was only informed when there was a serious matter. Therefore, he was sitting in his office and he didn't know anything. Now, concerning the 4.21 RGST, the RGST would be asked if need be. So if you didn't ask the RGST, then the RGST would not come. Now you tell us that there is division of labor among the departments, but there is no central coordination. The other departments would only be invited if there was such a need. It seems that there is no coordination, and there is no the tunnel becomes or rather the company has the autonomous domain, and you just there is no supervision. But in fact, Chairman, the operator has to report on the 4 areas I mentioned every month, and the departments also conduct site inspection. As for the TD, we conduct 30 checks per month. EMSD conducts 16 checks per month. Highways, on average, checks on the roads, 10% of the roads. As for having meetings, there is a quarterly meeting, and the EMSD is involved in the quarterly meeting, and the bi-monthly meeting of the EMSD with the operator also involves the Highways Department and the TD. The Highways Department is responsible for road maintenance. There is a specific team working with the operator, and they had monthly meetings. As for the RGSD, it is responsible for the maintenance of the administrative building, and therefore the meeting is held according to the needs. As pointed out by Mr. Leung, each department is closely monitoring the operator, and there is a working there are reports from regular reports, and we've agreed that there will be regular meetings to be held by the GMT, so that the monitoring will be more effective and more regular, and the departments will all be involved in the meeting, and that will be helpful to future monitoring. The Commissioner, can you explain 4.21a is a bit different from what you said. The Director of Highways, can you explain something in relation to 4.21a? You have specific responsibility, but here it says that you don't have any responsibility. As for 4.21a, Chairman, TSCA, the TD is responsible for the operation of TSCA. The Highways Department is responsible for looking after the hardware, the roads and the tunnels.
So, we work closely with the TD. We have colleagues working together with the TD on site. And we also have monthly meetings, regular meetings with the operator. We communicate closely with the TD. If there are any issues in relation to the maintenance and repair of work of the operator, we would talk to the TD. And in paragraph 4.21a, it said that the Highways Department was not required to carry out independent performance assessment on the operator, because the TD has all along been well aware of the Highways Department's assessment of the operator's performance. We have close liaison. The Commissioner of the Transport said that the Highways Department will make dozens of inspections every month. How is the inspection arrangement like? Do you have a logbook? Do you take photos and videos on problems identified? And you said TD and Highways Department have close liaison. I mean, by what means are you communicating with each other? Director, we do have records on the inspections, and if needed, the same can be provided. Well, Director, can you be very specific? Would you be informing the operator in advance on your inspections? Will you be surprise inspections, or you do both? You have regular and surprise inspections, and you would also have inspections in response to incidents. Can you be more specific on your work month by month? And after inspections, after you've locked things in the logbook, how are you having meetings with the operator? And thirdly, how did you inform the TD on all these matters? These are very specific questions. Director. The Highways Department has an established mechanism for inspecting highways. We conduct independent or surprise inspections without notifying the operator in advance. And if we identify certain problems, we would notify the operator immediately. If issues have to be rectified immediately, say if the road surface has been broken, posing a safety hazard, then the operator will be notified and for immediate follow-up action. And then we have as colleagues resident in the Changsha control area. So apart from liaising closely with the TD, We also communicate closely with the operator. We do so through many ways and means. The quickest way, of course, is to have a phone call. The same goes for the transport department. At the TSCA, we work as a team with the TD colleagues. Thank you. Mr. Lang, a question for the TD. Do you do your own inspections? The Highways Department, we know that they are responsible for maintaining highways and tunnels. And what about the TD? What have you done in relation to inspections? Commissioner. Well, we conduct at least 30 checks every month. There are surprise checks and checks, and sometimes the operators will be notified in advance, and we come up with a report after the checks. We will look at the facilities in the tunnels, the toll plaza, the toll booths, and other operational facilities. For example, whether the rescue vehicles are enough in number. So we compile monthly reports. Now, since the beginning of the contract, together with the EMSD, we compile quarterly assessment reports. And the Highways Department, after they've conducted inspections, starting the end of 2017, they have also copied the quarterly work assessment reports to the TD for our reference. For the second phase contract, are you linking the quarterly performance with the amount you pay? And are there any termination clauses in the contract? Now, will there be a clause saying that if there is poor performance, the contract can be terminated? Is there such a condition? Commissioner? We will look at the assessment of the operator. Now, say if there are incidents happening within the tunnel, and whether the rescue operation is conducted on time, then that will be made part of the assessment. And there is also penalty clauses, including termination of contract. Now, it's been into the 5th year of the contract. Now, have there been incidents whereby the operator has not been doing the proper repair work, even after they have been informed by the Highways Department they should do so? And as for the rescue scenarios, maybe the rescue vehicles came very late. In the past 5 years, have there been such incidents where has the operator been penalized for such incidents? There have been twice whereby the operator has not been arriving at the accidents on site in time. So the fine has been imposed on them for these 2 incidents. So that's been enforcement. That's what I heard. So that's all my questions for the contract. And then for the manning, can I refer members to table 15? There are 2 indicators here. So maybe the Director of Audit can explain a bit. Well, the total set here is 483. The very right column in the table is 483, and then there is leave relief staff 80. But then the 483 do not seem to be the actual manpower needed. The actual required manning level is 403 people. What is the difference between these two numbers, 483, 403, and then there is a term, leave relief staff. What does this mean? Well, if I don't get it, I don't think the public understand it either. Director of Audit, please. Thank you. Can I defer to the Assistant Director to explain? So I will try to explain the figures in Table 15. The first column, 483, the manning level requirements per contract, and 80 leave relief staff. These are all requirements in the contract. You can look at the remarks. According to the TD, the manning level requirement for leave relief staff is for reference purpose only. Therefore, the operator is required to deploy a total of 403 staff. In other words, so 483 deducted by 80 is equal to 403. That is interpretation of the Transport Department of the contract. Either you write 403 in the contract, or you will say that these 80 people will be asked to fill these different positions on a temporary basis, and that I can understand. But what is leave relief staff? So these leave relief staff are not needed on a regular basis. Can the TD explain? I really don't understand. Commissioner, let me explain it in this way. You can take a look at Table 15 and Table 16. For these 80 leave relief staff, some of them are E&M staff, some are operation staff. The tunnel operates around the clock. So there may be traffic wardens, operation staff who are required to execute certain tasks, and for EMS staff, they are technical staff. They would be on morning, afternoon, and shift. So there are 3 shifts in a 24-hour cycle, and for every shift there are operations staff and EMM staff deployed. So in the contract, we require the operator to make sure that there are enough staff during the morning, afternoon, and evening shifts. There would also be leave relief staff who, when required, can be on standby if needed. If, say, during a certain shift, some staff are absent, then such leave relief staff can help fill up the posts. So, put simply, we would look at the establishment for the operation staff and E&M staff to come up with a leave relief staff number that would be on standby. Now, for these 403 posts, these are all posts required on the part of the operator. Are they contract staff or not? For these staff executing duties on the highways, what are their relationship with the operator? Do you have a requirement on that? Commissioner, under the contract, the operator is required to hire 403 staff members. As pointed out in the audit report, in deploying staff, there may be some who are, say, working in the toll booths, etc. Maybe there have been times that they have not been able to hire enough staff, so some people will be hired on a short-term basis to fill up certain positions, but they must ensure that these temporary staff are qualified. For example, if they are in E&M staff, they must be qualified E&M personnel, and they can be taken on, hired on board to fill up certain vacant posts on a temporary basis. The Commissioner, you said that the operator is required to hire 403 people. They are basically the employees of the operator. They are not self-employed staff, right? Is my understanding correct?
There are many government contracts, and there are many problems happening to the THB, and some people did something and they were unable to trace those things and problems. And if you trace the matter, you found that they were only self-employed staff, then it would be problematic. So the Commissioner, can you confirm this or clarify these? These are these are staff members provided by the operator. Are they employees of the operator? According to my understanding, they were employed by the operator. When our colleagues check on the manpower of the operator, we check the pay slips, the salary pay slips. I don't have the details in hand. Will there be other staff members who are on different employment terms? I cannot give a general comment. But I can confirm that we make sure that in each shift, the staff members who are on duty, to discharge these duties, they are employed by the operator. If I may refer to Table 17 on manpower. Now, Table 17. We can see the actual staff shortfall on average. In the past few years, according to the Transport Department, it seems that the operator is able to have enough staff. Even if there is a temporary shortfall, they can get some staff members, employ some short-term staff to tie over the situation. So I just want to clarify at this point whether there is enough manpower in actual numbers. Are they average numbers? Yes, Chairman, they are actual numbers and they are average numbers. So the average numbers, but according to our calculation, I want to ask the Commissioner, in the past 5 years, was there a situation in which there was not enough staff members deployed, and therefore you penalize the operator? Chairman, according to Table 17 with regard to E&M staff, even if they have contracted out they still had not enough staff members on certain situation. And according to the EMSD, we did receive liquidated damages from the operator. Now they had to have 10 staff members to discharge duties, but at some occasions there was not enough, and some might be doing work in the daytime, and because of shortage of manpower, some would have to work in the evening shift as well, and we would count it as not having enough staff members, and we also deducted money from the operator. Now, according to Table 17, there was the average shortfall 24. That was only the average. Therefore, in many shifts, there might not be enough staff members. Would that cause any safety hazards? So according to the audit department, audit commission, shortage of 24, that was the average. That means in many shifts there might be a few bodies short. Have you assessed the impact on safety of the operation? Maybe the director of E&M can explain. E&M staff, shortfall. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Leung, for the question. With regard to monitoring the E&M, now they have day work. We check their roster every day. The shortfall of 24 was that they were not able to recruit all the staff members and fall short by 24. Now they can ask their staff to work overtime, and if there is any maintenance need in terms of day work, they can contract out the work. On the whole, the E&M, the EMSD will check on the impact on the E&M service, and on the whole, there is no problem. Chairman, there is a comment, a final comment, a general comment. Now, the STEM students didn't have any job opportunities, but we see that there is a shortage of E&M staff. So on one hand, the students, the graduates don't have jobs, and yet there is a shortfall. Maybe I have to put a question to the Secretary for Education. I have no further question on part 4, so I just leave time to other members. The other member is Mr. Lam. I think Paul does have some questions. Well, I'm always here. Chairman, if I may follow up on the manpower issue. If you refer to paragraph 4.12, the operator shall at all times during the term of the contract provide and maintain sufficient number of competent personnel at all levels for safe, effective, and efficient MOM of the TSCA in accordance with the staff plan specified in the contract. It speaks very clearly, at all times, adequate, sufficient number of competent personnel for safe, effective, and efficient MOM. Now, and B, if the operator fails, then the operator shall pay the sum of shortfall of staff to the government. I want to ask the director, or rather Commissioner for Transport. I hope she can clarify Table 15. The 80 were leave relief staff members, and the actual establishment is 403. So does it mean that the operator has employed 403 staff members, and it can therefore fulfill the requirement of the contract, assuming that there is no anything untoward? So if they have 403 staff members, they will be able to cope with the control of the work of the TSCA. Even if somebody has to take sick leave, take regular leave, 403 will be okay, and the 80 leave relief staff members were for additional and emergency demand. How should we understand this? The Commissioner.
誒，
With regard to the 403 staff members in the table, there are daytime staff members who also have regular leaves, and also 403 are adequate. The 80 leave relief members are based on 8-hour shift. We hope that there can be one additional person to meet the contingency. So it's a reserve. So it's sort of a reserve team. If 403 cannot cope, then another 80 will be added to the field. So the 80 are not necessary. Is my understanding correct? Yes, correct. The 80 are necessary, but they are needed because the 403 have leaves. Well, they say 403 are able to cope. Among the 403 staff members, say they are managers, the cooks and accountants. They belong to the management grade or belong to the administrative grade. They work in the administrative building. They may have statutory holidays. They are not relieved by the leave relief team. Our concern is three shifts, 67 operations, 13 EMS staff. We hope that there can be a reserve of 80 to meet contingencies. In these shifts, if there is any shortage, then they will fill the vacancy. Then I want to refer to paragraph 416. 4.16. As of December 2017, EMSD and Highways Department has taken measures to monitor the manning level of V&M staff and highway maintenance staff under their respective purview. B. While the TD had monitored the manning level of operation staff, it had not monitored that of administrative and supporting staff since the commencement of the MOM contract for the TSCA in September 2013. Chairman, I want to ask why they did not monitor administrative and supporting staff. Is it not your concern? The Commissioner, Chairman, with regard to the administrative and supporting staff, they are back office staff such as clerks, cooks, accountants, or accounting staff members. The operator provides information on staffing, but we do not check on them every month. To check on the accountants, the administrators, the clerks, they don't work in shifts. They are providing support in the back office. Chairman, when you award a contract, you should also monitor the administrative and supporting staff. You buy service from them, right? You don't just buy service from the front line, the staff members who looks after maintenance and operation. You should also check on monitor the administrative work. If the supporting work is not done well, then the front line will be affected. Why don't you look at it? Chairman, we agree that in this regard we didn't monitor that, and that is also not desirable. In the past, we did consider the performance of the operator in respect of the administrative work and supporting work. And when the audit check on us, we have already agreed that we will also monitor this part as well. The Commissioner, when I asked why, she didn't answer why. She just said that she would do it or make improvements. But we need to understand why they had such a mindset at that time, and this is to prevent similar occurrence in the future. I asked why. Well, Chairman, I did answer that. Maybe I am not so good at understanding. Well, of course not. With regard to the administrative and supporting staff, our staff look at their performance at large. It is not for actual implementation of the operation of the tunnel, and therefore we look at the overall performance. And we also look at the resources put into those areas. In the past, we just look at the performance that might not be adequate.
So moving forward, we would be also looking at the resources and the manning level. We will closely monitor the situation. Mr. Lam, Commissioner for Transport. Looking back, have you identified there's been a shortage in the administrative and supporting staff level? Well, starting end of last year, we started monitoring, and we had conducted on-site inspections, and the number of staff has risen. After September 2013, right up to the end of last year, well, how has the performance been like? We don't have the relevant information. The operator has given us information, but we didn't conduct any on-site inspections. We do have the operator's information, but we didn't take a look on-site. Well, perhaps you should try to explain it this way. For administrative and supporting staff, you look at the overall performance. You focus on that. And it's not like the frontline staff where you would be looking at the service level, etc. So because you're satisfied with the performance, so you didn't actually check the staffing level. So in the future, in the contract, you may not want to manage on a micro basis. So as long as the performance is satisfactory, they meet with your administration requirements on the administration aspect, then that's good enough. You should not spend the time checking on the number of staff, right? Maybe you should take a look and review the situation. You should not be just counting the number of heads, but rather you should be looking at the overall performance, right? In the Audit Commission's report, it is also said that for administrative and supporting staff, whether they should be counted towards the LD, liquidated damages, and also whether leave relief staff should also be subject to LD. That should also be subject to review. Well, this will be under our review. Well, let's be fair to them. We should not be focusing on the number of staff members. You should rather be focusing on the performance. For monitoring the performance or the work of the operator, we are adopting a performance-based approach. But then we think that the number of staff also matters. So that's why we add in the clause on liquidated damages. So we adopt a two-pronged approach in monitoring the performance. Now, you present one perspective, Chairman, but then for the operator, if you don't monitor their staffing level, you allow them flexibility to decide on the number of staff members. So operator, if they want to maximize their profits, they would hire fewer staff members, asking for their staff members to take on OT work without pay even. So that may be detrimental to staff benefits. So Commissioner, you should not just be looking at the overall performance only. when you sign the contract with the operator, you have to pay them out of public funds. So, of course, you should not be checking them every minute on whether the manning level required is met, but you should still have some random checks to see whether there is indeed such manning level, and you should also check whether the workers work excessively long hours, because, say, in sectors like the property management sectors, this kind of thing happens. They are supposed to have 20 cleaning workers, but they hire only 10 workers, and these 10 workers work around the different sites. So, ICAC has looked into a lot of such cases. Now, if they do have a shortage of manpower, and they claim that they have adequate manpower, then that is deception indeed. From September 2013 up to the middle of last year, you just went by the papers given to you, and you just believed in them. You didn't conduct any checks and inspections. You didn't monitor properly, and there is a loophole which can be taken advantage of by the operator to deceive you. This is a loophole. If you don't check, you're in big trouble. You have to understand the employee's perspective as well. While they are asked to work 10 hours or 12 hours instead of 8 hours as prescribed, and that will affect the overall quality of the operation. So please take a look. This is my comment. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. We said that we will carefully look at this. We have to be looking into the hiring of employees, personnel management. We also have to look at the number of, say, operations, E&M staff, administrative and staff, supporting staff, etc. Now, for these administrative and supporting staff members, there is one administration manager, assistant administration manager, and several clerks. And then there are a number of cooks and workers as well. And they work only on the day shift. They just work only the day shift. I would also like to ask a question on C. How come that after the contract took effect in September 2013, the manning level of building management staff had not been monitored? Director of Building, or HSD rather. Please switch on the mic. Starting 2013, our focus has been on the monitoring of the actual work, and that is on the maintenance situation of the buildings involved. The operator will submit a monthly report on the inspection records of the building, and if needed, they will come up with building maintenance proposals for our endorsement. We will also monitor the progress of the building maintenance works. So our focus has been on this all along. After the Audit Commission report has been published, we have asked for the operator to submit information on the manning level as well. We need one staff member to be deployed. Mr. Lam, the contract lists clearly the manning level required. Let's take a look at table 16, building management staff. There should be 5. That's your requirement, right? Director, please speak up. Now it's 5, as stated here. Chairman, the governing department said that they would look at the performance only. Well, if that is the case, you may as well do away with the number of staff members required. All you need to say in the contract is that you have to oversee the building maintenance work, and you should complete certain works by a certain date. So that's all is needed to be set out in the contract. You don't need to put the number of staff members here. Now, as long as you've got the number here, you have to check whether the right number of staff is there, whether it's the TD, HSD, or what. Well, you should not work like that. Are these numbers proposed by the government or the successful bidder of the contract? How did you arrive at these figures? And Chairman also, well, if their approach worked, then we would not be mind too much about the number of staff and the civil servants either. Say, as long as the police can keep the crime figures low, then we don't mind how many people they hire. Should it be like that? We're talking about public funds here. So, Director of HSD, please respond first. Please answer that question first. Did you decide on this number 5? Or was this number proposed by the successful bidder? Or was this figure arrived at by looking at the sums granted to them, to the operator? We came up with the suggestion. So it was you who proposed this number, the 5 building maintenance staff members. So since it was your proposal, did you check or supervise? So you proposed 5, so your assumption was that you needed 5 people to cope with the work, to ensure that the management is effective and efficient and the operation is safe. And now you're telling us that we are not very keen on making sure that there's 5, as long as you can cope with the work, then that's okay. You are contradicting yourself. Now, these are assets, and we need these 5 staff members to make sure that these assets are well protected or maintained, right? We understand the members' concern, and we accept the Audit Commission's recommendation, and in the monthly report to be submitted by the operator to us, we have added in this extra requirement on staffing level so that we can better monitor them. So, Chairman, I make this suggestion, and I hope all the policy bureaus and the heads of departments will take heed. Please go back and look at this. Not just on this management of the Sha Tin section, for other contracts awarded to outside parties. Check on all the contracts. You should not be just focusing on the performance of the contractor. You have to also look at whether they're abiding by the contract in terms of the staffing level. Of course, you are not going to check on them on a daily basis. You have to ask for reports to be submitted. You have to conduct random checks. You have to really check on them. And staffing costs are an important expenditure item, and the operator would easily cut down on the number of staff to maximize their profits. Now, if they do that, this is going against the contract, and if they provide false staffing reports, and that's a crime, an offense. And if there aren't adequate staff members. So in case something untoward's happening, the problem will worsen and public interest is at stake. So please don't take a band-aid approach. Now, this time we criticize the Sha-Tin section management problem, and then you just deal with this, and you're turning a blind eye to the other similar contracts. So please, Secretary for Transport and Housing, please go back and take a look. Thank you. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Lam, for your suggestion. We will consider your suggestion. Mr. Lam mentioned several issues in paragraph 438B. We said that the TD is starting to monitor the operator's compliance, and then we would also be monitoring the administrative and supporting staff level, and C, the HSD will continue to monitor the manning level in this regard, and E, it is also said that the TD will review whether and how to specify the manning level of administrative supporting staff, and F, now the TD will consider maybe imposing additional costs on the operator for failing to meet the required manning level, and G, the HSD has also taken similar follow-up action since January 2018. We understand members' views, and we will implement the proposals accordingly.
Now, the Secretary, you have to know that you award a contract, and then they have a certain manning level. You spend public money on that. There should be monitoring. Chairman, the Secretary refers to these paragraphs. They are all related to the performance of the TSCA contractor. But I refer to other projects as well. Mr. Lam, our report is report number 8. And yes, he has accepted that. I understand this point. I understand your point as well. I hope you also understand me. Chairman, if I may continue. Yes. Paragraph 4.27. A. Small Roman I. It refers to the situation in Table 17. Required manning level of 1 to 2 E&M staff, average shortage 24, or around 20%. In particular, for the rank of E&M technicians with required manning level of 46 staff. On average, there was a shortfall of about 16, or around 35%. I think E&M technicians are those who are responsible for maintenance on the front line. Is my understanding correct, Director of E&M? Yes, I can confirm that. Now you can see that there is a shortfall of around more than 30%. The shortfall is in the long term. And how can that maintain the quality of service? The Director. I think on average, staff member shortfall is 24. Among 120 something. As I said, they asked staff to work overtime to deal with that, and they also contract out some maintenance work. They get another subcontractor to do the replacement of the lights. We monitor their performance closely, and they are able to maintain normal operation. Question number 1, do you allow them to contract out some of the services in order to make up for the shortfall? Yes, they can do that according to contract. Now, how can you monitor the subcontracting, whether they have enough manpower? Yes, we do. We have resident staff. Say, for example, they get people to maintain the lights, then our resident staff will check on the situation. So does the director mean, Mr. Chairman, does he mean that there is a shortfall of 16 in number, but if they count overtime work and also the staff that are obtained through contract out, they are able to cope? Yes, they are able to cope. But as for the shortfall of manpower, they are penalized for the shortfall of manpower. Now they contract out the work. Then will you also penalize them? If they are short of manpower, they will be fined. Now you say they don't have enough manpower and therefore you can impose a fine on them, but you allow them contract out and the contract out is also allowed in the contract. In the main contract, how can you resolve the inconsistency? Well, they are not able to get enough bodies to do the work, but they need to perform the contract. The contract allows the operator to contract out the work, but there will be no LD. Yes, there will be LD. We count the bodies, and then if there is any shortfall, we report to the TD, and then the TD will impose the LD on them. So even if they contract out the service, they still don't have enough manpower. Can Mr. Lam repeat the question? Even if you count the number of staff provided by the subcontractor, there aren't enough bodies. According to the contract, we don't count the subcontractor staff members. They are just to deal with the maintenance work. You allow them to contract out the work. They are able to perform, but you still find them. They need money to pay the subcontractor. The director. Yes, Commissioner for Transport. If I may add, Mr. Chairman. According to my understanding, with the EMSD, the contract does allow the operator to contract out the service if they don't have enough staff to carry out the work. And we did impose an LD, LD on the operator. We count the number of bodies in each shift. In certain shifts, there aren't enough bodies to provide a service. And some staff members who work during the day shift, they may have to take up some time slots in an other shift, and that will be included in the calculation of LD. Even if they have subcontractors, staff to fill the gap, they still don't have enough bodies, and therefore they have to pay the LD. Do you count the do you include that in the LD if they have a subcontractor staff to do the work? No, that will not become any LD for that. Now, according to the director of E&M, there are staff members from the subcontractors, and also some staff members of the operator will work overtime. Do you know whether the staff working overtime will be given overtime pay? We don't have information. You need to check. You need to check. Or the Commissioner for Transport, do you have information? Where's the information? Why the Director of E&M doesn't know and you have to rely on the Commissioner for Transport? Well, the Commissioner is a coordinator. Anyways, the Commissioner. One just monitor the performance, the other monitor coordinates the work. Yes, they do pay overtime. I've made sure that staff members are not exploited. Well, you just work 2 or 3 more hours because somebody has not turned up to work, but you're not given overtime pay. Now, based on the inspection report of the EMSD, we also check on the operator. We also check whether they pay OT to their staff members. We can provide information. The Commissioner for Transport, since you know everything, I ask you this question. Paragraph 4.32. The TD initiated action to impose LD for staff shortfall on the TSCA operator in October 2014. However, due to unclear methodology set out in the MOM contract, it took 27 months for discussing and agreeing with the operator the methodology for calculating the amount of LD. For example, how sick leave or annual leave would be taken into account whether staff could take up the duties of 2 posts at the same time. Why you took 27 months? I really don't understand. Theoretically speaking, everything is in the contract. Say if there is a shortfall of how many number of staff, then what will be the LD? Why is there this unclear bit? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Lam. With regard to the TSCA contract, this was the first contract which had the LD clause. There is LD on performance. There is also LD on manpower deployment. In respect of the 3 shifts, there should be a simple mechanism for doing the calculation and then making a deduction if there is any shortfall. When the contract was drawn up, it was upon the requirement of the tender board. Within a short period of time, the clause was added with the agreement of the operator. When it was added, the principles were set out, and there were no specific details on daytime work. Say, for example, if the staff member has a statutory leave, how can this be calculated, and whether there can be acting arrangement for certain posts, and whether certain posts can be contracted out. These details were not clearly provided for, and we have to talk to the operator, and we also have to seek legal advice. In the 27 months we did that, and we finally agreed, and according to the advice of the DOJ, sick leave and annual leave according to the law, and that should not be counted. But if a staff member was to take up duties of 2 posts, that would not be calculated in the LD, but this was in respect of the daytime work. But if it was in respect of the 3 shifts in the front line, then the method of calculation would be different. In fact, the terms were put in the contract within a very short period of time. We have sought DOJ's advice, and we have added more details in the future, in the subsequent tunnel contracts. What I don't understand the logic. You asked the DOJ if a staff member took up duties of 2 posts that will not be included in LD. In that case, then they can cut their manpower by half. What do you mean? What is the reason for that? How can that be understood in this way? Now, that is in respect of day work. Say, for example, a manager, management staff, say there may be a statutory leave. Within a short period of time, there can be an acting arrangement. According to DOJ, this does not affect the overall manpower requirement, but in respect of the 3 shifts, if there is anyone taking leave, then they have to get a staff member to fill the gap. And when we check on them, and according to their information, in a certain time slot in one of the shifts, there is a shortfall of a staff member, then that money will be deducted. That's understood. If it is a short time acting arrangement, then you should not take away the money. But even if it is not, even if it is administrative work but not the 3 shifts, say if a manager has left or a management staff has left, and then another management staff has to take up all the work for a long period of time, then you should not allow the acting arrangement for 2 or 3 months without deducting the LD or without imposing the LD. So you cannot just adopt a general approach and say it is back office and therefore you allow that. Now say you require 2 or 3 persons to for a particular task, but in fact they only have 2 instead of 3, then it's unreasonable not to impose LD for the long time.
Members can please take reference from table 16 of the report. We talk about administrative and supporting staff. The number is 31. We have consulted the D of J. So for backup staff, well, they are some of them are not subject to LD for any shortfall. We have consulted the DO of J to seek clarification. So we would be monitoring whether the required manual level is met and whether the performance is up to par. But when we calculate the LD, some of the backup staff are not taken on board. So going forward, in future contracts, we would list out exactly the staff who would be calculated for LD and who would not. We would be formulating details on those so that we can easily implement the requirements in the future, and there will be value for money in all of these. Now, say if I were the operator and I knew that no matter what the shortfall for administrative and supporting staff was, we would not have to pay LD. So that means then I can say just put in 20 or 25 people instead of 31. As long as I can cope with the work, then you can't take me to task, right? Now we would adopt a 2-pronged approach in monitoring the operator, and for LD we would be looking at whether there is any shortfall in any particular time. And in the contract, there are other clauses on the assessment of the performance of the operator. If the operator doesn't meet the required performance and can't provide the prescribed services, there are other penalties, including fine for the operator. So for this part, the last thing that I would like to say for the Director of EMS or the Commissioner for Transport, if you find that there is a long-term shortfall of manpower, well, the Director of EMS said that they can't hire enough staff. There might be a couple of reasons. Work environment is poor, remuneration not attractive enough. So you have to look at all these. The EM staff are have a shortfall of 35% on a long-term basis. These are frontline staff, so you have to look at whether there's a problem with the remuneration or what. You are an operator. You have to manage the tunnel and the control area for the government. Maybe you put in a certain amount as your bid, but then say the wage level rises, and then you have to shoulder the burden yourself, right? You have to shoulder the cost. You should not be leaving the vacancies for a long term. Last point on 4.33, paragraph A, it says that the TD and EMSD had only imposed LD for about 14.5 months. However, for the remaining 37 months, the LD amount had not yet been ascertained. Well, how come that you can't deal with these at one go once the principles have been set? Commissioner, for the LD amount, that straddled from March 14 to 2016, and from 2014 to 2016, in calculating the LD, I have given you the details of how the calculation was made. And in paragraph 4.34, we said that as of February 2018, we reported the situation to the Audit Commission. For the remaining 37 months, whereby LD have to be calculated, we have ascertained the amount, and we have recovered all the amount, the money on the 16th of March. Can you give us a paper? And then I have another question on C. For building maintenance staff, the manning level of such staff had not been monitored since there was no established monitoring mechanism. So the staff had not been monitored since the commencement of the contract on the 19th of September 2013. As a result, information on staff shortfall remained to be checked, and hence no LD had been imposed up to December 2017. So which government department should answer this? So is it the EMSD or the RHSD? Thank you, Chairman. In early 2018, based on the records, we found that there were vacancies for several months in 2014. Considering all the information available, we have imposed LDs. What is the amount? Around $120,000. Well, let me further check on the exact amount. Director, you came up with the amount based on the records provided to you by the operator to ascertain the staff shortfall and then arrived at the LD. Is that correct? Yes. We have checked on the records of the operators provided to us. For those several months where there was a shortfall, we have deducted the amount. Director, have you checked on whether these records are accurate? Is my understanding correct? Yes, we checked on the records received. You don't get my meaning, Director. Now, the records show that there was a certain manning level on a certain date. Whether this piece of information is correct, have you verified such information? And there is indeed no way for you to do it, because all along you've not been monitoring them. Is that correct? Apart from checking on the records of the staffing levels, we have also asked them for the employment records and their contracts with the staff. Well, that doesn't mean whether they report for duty. Well, just give me a direct answer whether you have checked or not checked. Well, you checked the records, but you haven't checked whether that is really the case, right? Well, let me put it even simpler. Now, say employee presents a document saying that in the past 10 years, I've reported for duty as required, but nobody has really checked to see whether that employee has really reported duty. But then, going by the record presented to the employee, that you just give them the pay for 10 years. So we haven't really conducted any on-site checks. Okay, so that's what I want as an answer. Well, let bygones be bygones. So you can't do this any further. You just can't believe in the records of the operators, presented by the operators. And then a few years later, you said that, well, they're not doing so badly. There have been days where there is a shortfall of manpower. Well, you can give me the exact amount later on. But if their records show that, well, they have a full establishment every day, then there's nothing you can do about it, because you haven't really gone to the site to check on the actual situation. Is my understanding correct? Yes. For building maintenance, we provide technical advice. We don't play a very heavy role, so to speak, in the administration of the contract. The TD have resident staff at the control area, and they do a lot of inspections. And going forward, they would help us check on the number of staff. In fact, there is only one staff member. Well, let's not talk about the future. Let's focus on the period covered by the Commission's reports, audit reports. So, whose responsibility is it to check on the building maintenance staff? Is it the TD or the HSD? Well, according to our division of responsibility, it should be the HSD. So the director should no longer say that they should just focus on the technical issues. Do you agree that you should also be looking at the manning level? Yes, we will look at the manning level. But then we don't conduct frequent inspections. Well, I'm not asking you to conduct inspections frequently. I'm asking for random checks only. Well, they haven't done that. Well, in the future, they will do so. Well, Director, you've tried your best to answer my questions already. All right. The last item is item D. And then you're followed by Kenneth. Mr. Lam. D. I will not ask a question on D then. Chairman, last but not least, I would like to tell the government departments. Well, the number of staff for under a contract is very important, because it has been agreed upon by yourself and the operator. You are paying public funds to hire a certain number of staff members. Well, an adequate number of staff members will be able to provide stable and good service. If you do not mind about the staffing level, that would affect the quality and the stability of public services. Please take a serious look at other contracts, whether there are similar arrangements or situations. If you are not going by the right approach, please tighten up on your monitoring. Tomorrow it will not be on this chapter. Mr. Lam, we are done with part 4, and for the next meeting, we might not need the presence of other government departments. Of course, Transport Department has to be here. Thank you very much for your attendance, and thank you, Director of Audit. Tomorrow is chapter 3.